May 2025, I was on a tour bus from Munich to Linderhof and Neuschwanstein. I was listening to the WooCash podcast episode with Billy Basso. His name entered my radar because his game, Animal Well, was published by Video Game Donkey. In the podcast, I learned that the game was made from scratch, and when I first heard the words, Handmade Hero. If you haven't heard of Handmade Hero before, I get it. I was in the same boat. I had no idea it existed. But even though I was on vacation and I didn't have my computer, I started watching it immediately. I soon realized that this game engine course was something I'd been looking for a very long time. I have always wanted to know how games work at their very core, and Casey Muratori teaches exactly that by streaming himself making a PC game from scratch. So the second I got home, I completed the first 10 or so days of Handmade Hero, and I absolutely loved it. But I had other priorities. I still didn't really understand how a custom game engine fit into my plans for my game dev journey. So I finished my first game, Droppy Ball, in Godot, and I released it on Steam. Only for $1, by the way, please go buy it. I also put it on the Play Store and the App Store for free, so go check it out. Somewhere around September or October of last year, I started working on the custom game engine again. I have a big game idea in the works, and I think this custom engine could work for that game. Over the next few months, I was a little aimless. Yes, I had this big game idea that I could make sometime in the future, but I didn't know all that would be necessary to make it. So I was just picking systems at random and trying to build them out. But I know this is a bad idea. In my experience, learning happens so much faster when you have something to work towards. So I made a game.
É o grave do morro que faz tremer. Bate forte, não dá pra conter. Ela desce, sobe, vem pra vencer. No balanço do beat ninguém vai entender. Grave, faz no chão tremer.
Yes, I know you are all very proud of me for making this incredible new hit game that doesn't even have a name, but that's not the point. The point is that my game engine is so much better than it was before, and I learned a lot. I released the game on itch.io, so definitely go check it out. Link is in the description. My high score is 161, so that's definitely the low bar. I didn't expect this, but it's actually quite a bit easier to play on the phone, so just a tip. Elephant in the room, this is a very simple game. But despite that, I added a lot of new systems to my game engine. Check this out. I added shape rendering, a UI system, a random number generator, font loading, text rendering, countdown timer, improved keyboard input, and improved Win32 and WASM platform layers. I want to go over a few of these systems in code real quick, and I'm going to start with the RNG. I needed a lot of randomness in this game. Random shapes, random colors, random sizes, random animation intervals, random positions. And I needed it to run really fast. So you can see right here, I'm iterating over the max number of shapes, which I set to 256. But the problem here is that I didn't want the shapes to be on top of each other, like truly on top of each other. So I had some sort of minimum distance they could be away from each other, and I just brute forced it. So every time I put a shape in a position, I would just check all other shapes and see if they were too close. And if they were, then I would just randomly generate another shape. All of this happens when you press the play button. So when you press start here, it generates 256 shapes in memory instantly. Like, it's crazy. Like, look at this. I can just... Crazy. Computers are really something these days. The way I tackle adding systems to my game engine is I first go to the Handmade Hero website and see how Casey did it. So let's look at how he does random. Here we go. So right here, he talks about adding a random number generator to his game engine. And the way he does it, which is a very efficient way, by the way, is that he goes to random.org and he randomly generates, 1,000 numbers, and he puts them in a lookup table in his code. And then he uses a PCG family random number generator algorithm to randomly pick items in that lookup table. I think he ends up using XOR Shift 32. That solution ended up being somewhat unsatisfying for me for whatever reason. But lucky for me, I found this algorithm called XORoshiro 128++. And what XORoshiro stands for is XOR, rotate, shift, rotate. So what that's doing is it's doing bitwise operations on a number, and it is XORing it, rotating it, shifting it, and rotating it, creating a random variance in number output. It ends up being extremely fast and very random, which is exactly what I wanted. There was one hiccup with it, which is that you need to seed it with something that is non-zero. And so there is a transformation that I put on the seeding. But other than that, it's very straightforward and works quite well. So here it is. Here's my Xeroshiro. So like I said, when you seed it, you end up having to do what's called a split mix 64 so that you don't get a 0 seed. Here's my next algorithm, and I have a next I for int, and I've got a next F for float. Oh, and then I have min and max, like ranged RNG, and that's it. 64 lines of code. That is my random number generator. The next system I want to talk about is the UI system, which ended up kind of being the entire game. So basically, I have hover states on shapes, which can be buttons or the actual elements of the game. I have text. Everything is clickable. So how did I do this system? I'm going to start with the font. I decided to use STB TrueType. If you've never heard of STB libraries, you got to learn more about them because it's basically Sean Barrett created a bunch of header files that act as all-inclusive libraries that you can just plop right into your code. Now you may be wondering, I thought you don't like using libraries. And the answer is yes, I don't really like using libraries. And in fact, Casey doesn't use this library in his series in the game engine. He uses it in the asset creation tool. So he creates a separate system that packages like an asset file for himself. I'm not doing that right now. I actually ended up just putting this in my game engine. I think eventually I would like to do that, what Casey did, pack my own asset file. But for now, this is what I used. So like I said, I just plopped STB TrueType straight into my code. Font loading ended up being pretty simple once you use this library. And then it's all about rendering it. So let's talk about the rendering system, because everything in this game is rendered from code. I don't really have any asset files or anything other than the font files, but I learned a bunch of anti-aliasing algorithms for a software renderer, and that's what I used for everything. And I want to show off a little bit why that is a problem and why people use graphics APIs like OpenGL or Vulkan. So here we go. If I set my visible shapes to 256, which is the max shapes, as you may have guessed, we're going to see, oh boy, look at that choppiness. Oh my goodness. Oh no. Oh, it's running at like less than a frame a second. Oh my goodness. So that happens because of obvious reasons. I'm doing all the rendering myself. So for every single one of those shapes, I am going in scan lines across the entire shape and drawing it every frame. So 256 shapes, and they're all like hundreds of pixels tall and wide, and I'm rendering them all. So that is why the game only shows 5 at a time. You can only have 5 at a time. Luckily, creating the shapes is extremely fast because rendering them is not. My rendering system for the fonts is the exact same as for the shapes. It just starts at the top of the letter and just keeps going down until it's drawn the whole letter. It's a bounding box scanline rendering system. A font is just a series of glyphs, and a glyph is just a bitmap. And so when you load the font into memory, you pick the font size and it just draws a bunch of characters straight into your memory. And then I draw it to the screen. So in this case, I'm drawing black pixels onto my bitmap buffer. So that's the progress on my custom game engine and my new game. But what's the point of all of this? Is it really worth it to make a custom game engine? That's not the point of this video. I'm going to make another video about that sometime. But the important thing is that this is the most fun I've had coding and learning in my entire life. So yeah, I'm going to keep working on this custom game engine, and I'm going to keep making games in this way. As always, check out my game Droppy Ball. It's $1 on Steam and free on mobile. If you like this style of devlog, like, comment, and subscribe for more. Please buy my game.